Gaza City right now, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are under threat. Israel has ordered them to leave, calling it their last opportunity before unleashing the full force of its assault. The message from Israel's defense minister, Katz, is chilling. Anyone who stays behind in Gaza City will be treated as a terrorist or a terrorist sympathiser, paving the way for their slaughter. The children, the sick, the pregnant, the elderly. The continuous bombardment has reduced Gaza's largest urban center to rubble. Schools, homes, entire neighborhoods wiped out. Dozens are being killed every single day. Families are being forced to flee south to an unknown fate. MSF, or Doctors Without Borders, has been forced to suspend its activities in Gaza City as the offensive intensifies. And yet, behind those headlines are the voices of people living this reality. And this week, I'm speaking with one of them. Nour Al-Saqqa, a Palestinian herself displaced from Gaza City, works as a communications officer with MSF. This conversation is not about headlines or statistics. It's about listening to what it feels like to wake up in Gaza today, to carry grief, and to hold on to the smallest fragments of life when everything around you is being destroyed. Nour, thank you so much for doing this. I know how hard it must be for you right now. Before we begin, can you tell us a little bit about you? You know, what you do and what things have been like for you since all of this broke out.
Um, Thank you for having me. My name is Nour Al-Saqqa. I now work as a communication officer for MSF in Gaza. Um, it's I can't say that it's easy, but it's meaningful. I think that's one way to describe it. So many of the things happening around us feel absurd that it's cool to think about something meaningful in the midst of all of this. I always think about how, throughout the genocide, it's been phases. And in the first phases, we were kind of looking for answers or assuming that things would make sense, assuming that if some red lines were crossed, that someone would step in to stop this madness. But then, like, the more atrocities happened, the more we lost hope in all of this, in all of this stopping. So it kind of does not make sense, and it's illogical because does not make sense for hospitals to be bombed, it does not make sense for like an entire population to be starved, deprived of food and water, for God's sake, like water, and so, like, during conversations with colleagues, what was very eye-opening is a realization that nothing is logical, and that's how it is. We've accepted this fate.
What does an ordinary day look like for you right now, if such a thing even exists?
An ordinary day would be waking up, going to work. During my work, I work mostly in hospitals and clinics, so I get to see firsthand a lot of what's happening. Um, I get to see our response, the health staff struggling with basic things, the chaos, the blood, the desperation. You see everything. Like, I see a lot on my way to work, during work. I go back home and I just help my family because ordinary life, or ordinary things are so demanding right now. Things as simple as boiling water to prepare food or to prepare a drink would take so much energy and so much resources, because there's simply not enough, not there's no cooking gas available. And describing the smallest things, like everything can be traced down to the bigger scope of genocide and siege, that like even talking about preparing a cup of coffee, in order to explain how it is, you'd have to think about all the ways of why we're struggling to make this cup of coffee, like turning on the light, turning on the fire to boil water, because there's no cooking gas, because the borders are closed by Israel and controlled, and they have absolute control over everything that comes into the strip, and Israel simply decided not to let cooking gas in, forcing people to create solutions or other ways to light fire for cooking, like burning wood, and creating this fuel, makeshift fuel from burning plastic and waste, and this whole cycle of pollution, and terror, because it's just so exhausting. It takes so much time. And this coffee, that you have to be very conscious of the amount that you put in the water, because it's not something that is available all the time. And when it's available, it's expensive. Everything's expensive. You have to be very conscious of everything that you consume. You have to rationalize every tiny bit of resource you have. And this is something that we've been doing since day one. It's not just in the last few months where there's a complete block of borders. This has been controlling the resources, limiting them, forcing people to literally fight for them. It's just the reality that we're forced to endure right now.
And what about
So,
electricity? I mean, are people in Gaza still relying on solar panels, or what's the situation there now?
so in the first few months of this genocide, Israel targeted the solar plant of electricity. So there's no source of electricity in Gaza Strip, and we rely on solar panels and we have them because even before the genocide, we did not have full 24 hours of electricity. It was always limited to 8 to 12 hours a day. So for the rest of the day, we kind of have to find ways to make a kind of like get electricity, whether by generators or solar panels. And again, the generators need fuel, and fuel is not available because Israel is simply blocking it from entering, and it's letting it in with very few amounts, not sufficient even for the hospitals. So even inside the few remaining hospitals in the strip that are barely functioning, um, the hospitals are rationing their electricity consumption, because if they run out of fuel, which is very likely, which has happened before, unfortunately, people die, children in incubators die. So yeah, the whole strip relies on either solar panels or generators. And generators are not accessible for most of the population because, again, fuel is very limited and extremely expensive.
I remember
So
those
those
things.
who
I mean,
have
I grew up in Gaza. They're massive, they're heavy, and with the constant displacement, it would be even unthinkable, even if you did have fuel, to be lugging around a power generator everywhere
exactly,
you
that's
go.
not something that you would simply pick up. So it's not available for Palestinians in Gaza. It's mostly hospitals, organizations who have the resources to move these generators, to get them in the first place, to supply them with fuel. So for the rest of the people, it's solar panels. We have solar panel, like we have a solar panel, a single solar panel at home, and it like we have to be very, again, very conscious in the way we use it, in order to last us all day long, because it charges only during sunlight for a few hours, and we save it for lights in the night and stuff like that. But again, we're very privileged to have access to that, because not only are the resources very limited in the strip, but also the constant displacement that we're going through forces you to leave behind the very few resources you've managed to gather.
I remember at the
And
beginning of all of this, my family's neighbors, they had a solar panel and they would sort of service the entire neighborhood. You know, people would just leave their phones there to charge or things like that. Um, be there for the community, essentially. I don't know what the situation is like now. Are people still able to kind of offer help when they can barely help themselves? And especially with the constant displacement, is it still a thing? You know, people just trying to be there for each other.
I mean, when you talk about community, it's personally, it's such a difficult topic, because I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've been examining it through my personal relationships, through my family, through my community, through the people I see around. And um, unfortunately, we've reached a point where Israel has managed to completely destroy the very fabric of society. And they managed to do that with so many techniques and so many intentional, systematic ways, and warfares against family, against community, against like the whole population. Um, and it started off in so many ways, even like from the very beginning, through displacement, for example. From the first time I was displaced was 13th of October 2023 from Tel El Hawa. I'm originally from Tel El Hawa, that's at the moment being completely wiped out by Israeli forces during their invasion to Gaza City. And the moment we left, not knowing how long we'd be gone for, not knowing what was waiting for us, um, we had nowhere to go to in the south. So we stayed with friends, and we were like 5 families in a single house. And then it felt like we spent like 3 weeks there, and it felt like it was too much, and too much of a burden for the very kind people hosting us. So we chose to go to another place, and we had no other place but to go to a kindergarten with our relatives. So there were like 3 families, so many kids sleeping in, like we were in a kindergarten, sleeping on the floor for months. And this alone, being crammed in very tight spaces while fighting for resources, um, it really does get to you. Uh, it shifted the role of the family itself, where women are now expected to wash their clothes. Like we were washing our clothes on our hand because there's no electricity. We're forced to source out and kind of create something to eat out of nothing. We're forced to, bake bread and kind of figure out things and survive in the cruelest of circumstances. Um, and at the same time, men who are providers uh, are no longer able to provide. They've lost their source of income. They've lost um, the very thing that they claim to give them meaning, which is protection, protecting the family. They're no longer able to protect their kids because the bombs are raining down everywhere, and it's horrific. So everyone's kind of lost their sense of self in a way during this genocide, and everyone's role in the family has shifted. Kids are now, instead of going to school, are fetching water and fetching food, and this really does get to the society as a whole. um it started off slowly like this, but it grew a lot more crueler um during the blockade that lasted months, and the forced starvation. So I don't know, watching your kids starve, watching yourself, watching your family, watching yourself waste away, um, something as basic as food turns you into a monster. I mean, you want to do whatever you can to just like feed your family. Um, and it reached the extent of people risking their lives to go get food at these food distribution, US Israeli food distribution sites, where people knew that if they went there, they'd get shot. It's very likely to get killed, and they still went that far to get food. Um, and I think that was one of my breaking points, is watching my people get killed for seeking food. It's just very humiliating and dehumanizing to such an extent, um, that it just breaks you. So when you reach that point, it's very hard to think about anyone but yourself. It's very hard. You need to survive. You need to keep your kids alive. You need to, and it's, I don't know. It managed to get to people. I remember one time near a water truck, um, and the thing is, there's no natural sources of water here. So in order to get water, it does not come out of faucets. You have to go and fetch water from trucks. So these trucks go to desalination plants that, by the way, run on fuel and electricity, and an electricity line coming straight from Israel that Israel is controlling. And that's why we say the word weaponization a lot, about how Israel is weaponizing food and weaponizing water, because they have complete um, they have complete control over it, and they get to use it against a whole population the way they like. Um, so again, in order to get water, you have to go to these water trucks, and the problem with the water trucks, and why you see scenes of people fighting for these water trucks, is because, again, the resources are limited. Why? Because so many water desalination, so the trucks no longer have access to them, or that or that, for example, the fuel is running short, which has happened before, reducing the amount of water being produced. Uh, so reducing the amount of water people have access to. Um, yeah, so these trucks come in and people fight for them. And one time, a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, through that day, yeah, he went to this water truck, and a man was fighting so hard, and he was like a young man, and the truck was full of older men, taller men, and he looked at him, screaming and shouting, and he was nice to him, and the man calmed down, and he told me, Noor, I think the guy is just he's just terrified. He's afraid. He's fighting, he's screaming, he's shouting, because he's just simply afraid and unable to get enough water to his family. So his way is just like, this, all this rage that you're seeing, it's coming out of complete terror inside of him. And that's where you see terror and humiliation that is very intentional. I mean, the simple aspect of going to bathrooms in camps, or in displacement camps, or in very crowded houses, like We spent long months displaced in very small spaces that has one bathroom, and we'd be like 30 people, and it's just like this mere concept like gets you, it hurts you, it humiliates you, and it's intended to do so, so that you're broken and you're helpless and you're defeated, and you can't help but do anything.
Where are you right now, if it's safe for you to share? I mean, I know you mentioned that you're originally from Tel El Hawa, which for our viewers, it's a very vibrant, modern neighborhood of Gaza City, which is in the north of the Gaza Strip. And it's now being, as you said, being wiped out. And, you know, the high-rise buildings being completely, all the high-rise buildings in Gaza City are being completely demolished and bombed. But where are you right now?
I'm currently in Al Zawaida, which is in the southern part of Gaza Strip. Um, Packed, crammed in less than 15% of the strip, because the rest is either under military Israeli evacuation orders, or dangerous places where Israeli army are. So by going there, you risk your life, and you're in risk of being shot and killed. So I'm in Zawaida, and I'm trying to calculate in my head how many times have I been displaced. I've been this, and I think this marks the 10th, ninth or 10th time. I cannot recall.
Do you think you will be going back to Tel El Hawa?
The first time I went back to Tel El Hawa was during the ceasefire. So again, after leaving on the 13th of October 2023, um, a month later, Israel completely separated Gaza Strip into two parts, calling one of them the south and the other the north. Um, I hate the I hate naming Gaza City and the north, because we have a northern governorate, containing Beit Lahia, Beit Hanun, and Jabalia. And then we have Gaza City, and then we have the south, and then we have the middle area, and then we have the south. So it's um,
Yeah, Gaza City as the north. I see what you mean. Yeah.
yeah. So the first time I went, we'd already knew that our house was bombed or leveled to the ground. Yet we were still eager to go, and we spent 24 hours by car just to get there. And my brother was cursing the fact that it took us this long to just like go and see the rubble of our house, but we couldn't wait. We've been waiting for a whole year, um, forced to stay in the south, unable to go to Gaza City. And yeah, the problem is the restriction of movement. Um, it's very painful because I grew up in Gaza City, and we live a very simple life. We don't go around a lot. So I knew just like a few neighborhoods that I was going to, like my school, um, my favorite place, my restaurant, my favorite cafe, my friends' houses, and my own home. So everything in the south of the strip was very foreign to me. Um, and when we went back to Gaza City for the first time, despite the fact that it was in ruins, that you'd go through so many neighborhoods unable to recognize them because they've completely turned into dust and rubbles. Um, but Gaza was still Gaza. And it was so weird because I spent so much time thinking about this concept. Is that what makes home a home? Is it the people? Is it the memories? Is it the places? Because
Yeah, that's what I
because
wanted to ask you actually. What does home mean to you after everything that's happened?
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that again?
Oh, don't worry. I was saying that I wanted to actually ask you, what does home mean to you at the moment?
Um, yeah, so I thought that home was made out of like people and memories and places. But I went to Gaza City and I lost so many people. Um, and Israel has killed so many people, so many friends and family. So many of them killed or forced to evacuate, or here and there shattered, everyone in their own world. The place is completely reduced to rubble. Um, the memories, there's no traces of them, no photo albums, nothing, but it still was home. So I've no idea what makes home home, but there's just something about Gaza that no matter what stayed the same. And there's this feeling of comfort that does not make sense and I cannot describe, um, that I felt every time I went there. During the ceasefire and afterwards, it was just like this familiarity. It's seeking any kind of remains from life before this genocide started. It was the smell of the sea, the streets. I don't know, but it was. I don't know. I would walk in the streets, and despite not knowing anyone, everyone felt familiar there. Uh, so I don't know. I cannot pin it down.
When you imagine Gaza before October 7th, what are the images and the sounds that come to you? Can you hear me, Noor?
My aunt's home. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. The camera's slow, but I can still see you and hear you. Yeah, as I was saying before it disconnected, I was asking you, when you imagine Gaza before October 7th, what are sort of the images and the sounds and the things that you remember?
When I think of images, I think are all places that have been destroyed by Israeli forces. My home, my aunt's house, um, a cafe on the beach, um, my friends and family. So yeah, and when I think of a smell, it's the trees in our backyard, um, the trees around my aunt's house, jasmine, flowers. Um, it's it's a mix of blurry scenes, of a lot of family, of beautiful smell of food, uh, loud voices, um, happy voices, people screaming in laughter, not in tears for once. I think that's what comes to mind.
And how do you grieve when there is no time or space to even process all that loss?
I don't think I've grieved anything in the last 2 years. I don't think I grieved anything properly, if that makes sense, or I've grieved at all. Um, there's simply not enough energy and not enough space for grief because life is so demanding. um, a friend gets killed and you rush to go. Like the last time a friend of mine was killed, I was rushing um, between transportation, and transportation is very difficult because again there's no fuel, um, and spare parts for the few cars running hasn't entered the strip in 2 years, and everything is patched up together, you know, everything. The few cars running, the places, the homes, the tents, everything's patched up because there's simply not enough of anything. So between the donkey carts, the barely functioning cars, um, the 30 people riding like a very small bus, after like 3 or 4 transportations, I managed to get to the cemetery. By the time I got there, they'd already buried him. Um, and I was just sobbing because I didn't make it in time. Uh, I cried for a bit, and um, the very next day I was at work working on another story of another Israeli attack, of another this, another massacre, another that, another war crime, another loss. Um, and I haven't thought about him properly since. So grieving requires you to process things and think about them and think about how you feel about them and think about how you'd act with those feelings and what you'll do with them and how you'll contain them or how you'll get them out or anything. I don't know, but all of that is just such a luxury right now between managing water, barely eating, overworking, this, that, displacement, bombs, moving here and there. There's so little space for you to sit and think about the magnitude of loss that we're forced to endure on a daily basis.
You're very active on social media, so I imagine you get to see all of these videos and the images of the Israeli soldiers that they film and post of them, you know, gleefully destroying Gaza or detonating explosions or going through the possessions of Palestinians that have been either killed or displaced. I mean, how do you feel when you see these images and videos?
Um, I don't know if there's a word more vicious than rage, um, but absolute rage. Um, I see them laughing and going through these houses and making memes, and it's just so evil and so cruel and so psychotic that it frustrates me. I immediately think about um, our house that was bombed and our street that's completely gone. Um, and my grandma who passed away because she did not have access to proper medication and proper food and proper shelter, and my friend who was killed because she went back to her house to get a few things when the house got bombed, killing her and her um, mother and father and leaving her siblings now alone. Um, so I don't know. I try to avoid these scenes as much as possible. Um, Um, I mean, I don't know about the word misunderstood, because how can someone misunderstand a genocide? But I think about all the ways they run in circles around words, to create misconception and to just like put a cover for Israel's war crimes and for their complicity in these war crimes. So it's just completely absurd, and anyone who undermines the role of media is completely um, how can I say this in a nice way? But I don't know. I don't know how to describe this. Manufactured consent did not happen overnight. It was planned. It was intentional. It was created specifically. I'm sorry, created specifically to shift the facts, to shift the blame, to deceive people, um, and to normalize the atrocities. I mean, the words the media uses to cover up for Israeli war crimes by describing hospitals as Hamas run, for example, uh, it's completely absurd. It's completely unrealistic and um, insane. The double standards. I always think about the war uh, between Russia and Ukraine, and how different reporting is there compared to Israel's genocide on Gaza, and how our lives completely are disregarded. Um, they don't mean anything at this point. I mean, we've reached the point where we get 80 of us, 90 of us killed on a daily basis, and no one mentions their name. They're just like 80 killed today since dawn in the last 24 hours, this and that. Um, so it's hard to face this reality, but if anything, it just gives me a reason to keep documenting and sharing, because it's very important. I mean, we're fighting a huge propaganda machine funded by the most powerful in the world, controlled by the most powerful in the world. And it's ridiculous that we're being censored to this extent, that we have to go around words, blur out some scenes, just to not bother people with the atrocities committed on us. It's just insane.
Do you allow yourself to think about the future? And if you do, what does hope look like to you right now?
I honestly don't think I thought about the future ever in the last 2 years. Like, there seems to be no future. I mean, what future can be after all of this destruction, after all of this mass killing, after all of this displacement? I mean, it terrifies me to think about what would happen to us. How are we going to face all of this, if it ever ends? Like, I've completely lost the hope that it might even end. But to think hypothetical in a hypothetical way about the possibility of this ending and facing this society, I think about the children, months and years of their lives lost fighting for water and food, carrying the remains of their family, raising each other basically because their parents are killed or injured, handling all of this responsibility and burden and trauma. How are they going to sit in a chair and learn it? Um, how are they going to interact with each other? What future awaits these traumatized kids and these burdened mothers and those broken fathers? So hard for me to think about a future when all of this terror is happening in the present.
Do you feel like the children or the kids understand what's happening, and how do they describe what's happening? Do they dare dream of a future? Do they talk about the future?
What?
So I've lost the connection completely with Nour. She's unable to reconnect to the internet, so we're gonna have to end it here. But thank you to Noor so much for joining us and for describing everything that you're going through during this difficult time. And I hope we can speak face to face soon and that this will have all ended. And to our viewers and our listeners, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week with another episode of Palestine. Thank you.
لأني ولدت فلسطينيا، لأن جذوري في عمق الدهور، لأني ولدت عربيا، وأني في القدس من فجر العصور، أموت كل يوم، أموت كل يوم. القدس لنا دوما، القدس لن تموت.